Welcome to episode 7 of After the Breach, a podcast by whale enthusiasts for whale enthusiasts. We're your hosts, Jeff Friedman and Sara Shimazu, recording from Friday Harbor, San Juan Island, Washington. We'll start this episode with our most recent sightings from here in the Salish Sea, and we have some interesting things to cover. We're also going to talk about whale watching in other parts of the world, the Silver Bank, the breeding and calving waters for North Atlantic humpback whales. We'll be joined by Gene Flipse, owner and operator of Conscious Breath Adventures, to talk about the North Atlantic humpbacks and the special in-water encounters in the Marine Mammal Sanctuary of the Dominican Republic. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, Sara.
Hey, Jeff.
Before we jump into some really cool recent sightings here, just wanted to remind everybody, if you're enjoying these podcasts, to leave us a review on iTunes or contact us on Instagram or follow us and subscribe wherever you are listening. You can also contact us through our website, afterthebreachpodcast.com.
Yeah, and we've actually had some listeners join us on board lately. I know I've had at least a handful of people that have been like, yeah, we came out because we heard you guys on After the Breach podcast, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is great to meet people on the boats that we're running with Maya's Legacy Whale Watching and going out on our tours with people that listen to the podcast. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and we do still have tours going out, Jeff, through the end of the year. So if you guys are thinking of coming up to San Juan Island, definitely feel free to jump out with us. And not to give myself a little promo here, but we do have a photo workshop now this month. It's September 1st. So in just a couple of weeks here, we're doing a photo workshop on the 16th and 17th, and we still have a few seats left both days. So if anybody's interested in coming up for that full day on the water, Jeff and myself will probably be on board then, and we'd love to have you.
Yeah, and you can reach out to us Instagram at After the Breach, or contact us through our website, afterthebreachpodcast.com, if you're interested in the photo workshop or coming out with us at any time on a tour. So on that note, it has been really epic here lately. We have had lots of Bigg's killer whales in the area, the marine mammal eating killer whales. If you listen to episode 6, that is the real definition of that population, the marine mammal eaters. And one day this past week, we had 11 different groups in the Salish Sea with over 50.
Yeah, what was it? Something like 54, I think, 50, is the final count.
Which is not a record. We've had days with more than that, but I was out on the water, and it was one of those days where, like, the entire first half of the day, new groups just kept popping up and being found, and it was really, really cool. And I can't remember the last day we haven't seen killer whales. It's been weeks.
Oh, don't jinx us. Don't jinx us, Jeff.
Well, we've had some very interesting, and this will go back to episode 6 when we talked about the culture of the Bigg's killer whales and how their social norms and social dynamics are so interesting and unique, and how they travel not just in matrilines, but how we'll see parts of matrilines, and we'll see some of the whales dispersing. And one of the groups that we've seen on multiple occasions over the last few weeks, and they've really kind of won a special place in my heart, are the 124 A2s and A4s. It's a very young family. It's 2 sisters who have dispersed from mom and are traveling with each of them with their kids and traveling together. And I don't know if, Sara, you want to kind of give some background on the 124As and talk about A2 and A4 and how they're dispersed together now.
Yeah, and I think we kind of touched on it last episode about it, and probably even beforehand, because we talked about this like amazing encounter of whales going through Jorgensen Pass, and one of the families involved in that was T124A4, who's the younger sister in this duo that Jeff is talking about.
She's what, 12 years old?
Yep. Born in 2010, and she just had her first calf last year. So really exciting to see kind of a new mom coming up. And she, had been with her mom, since her calf was born, and her mom actually had a calf just a handful of months after her. So her 7th seventh offspring. Crazy. And we saw it just, now it's probably been 2 months or so since we had that Jorgensen Pass encounter. I think early June. So 3 months. Oh, gosh, time flies. But 3 months or so that T124A4 split. And we actually saw them all together one day. And then I think it was just a couple of days later when T124A4 had split off from her mom and siblings.
Which is something they do when they start having their own offspring. They do leave mom. We see them getting back together, but they do go off to raise their kids on their own.
Right. And sometimes it's like they will leave for a couple of days and then they get back together with their mom. And then maybe a little while later, they'll leave for a little bit longer. She just kind of split off and she joined up with an unrelated family group, at least to our knowledge, the T86As. But in most recent encounters in the last few weeks has been with her older sister, T124A2, who was born in 2001. So she's 21, has 2 calves of her own, and has been split off, for, at least 4 years now from mom, and kind of knows the drill as far as being dispersed and being this, head of her family.
Yeah, and I think that's really kind of what has fascinated me is that she's off, 124A4 is off being a very young new mom on her own and has hooked up with her older sister and is learning how to be a mom out there away from her mom, but is hanging out with her older sister. And it's a really nice group to see. It's all young whales.
Yeah. And it's been cool to see them too, as they've been kind of navigating through these inland waters and here for a little while and then, not being seen whether they're here or not here. And then kind of showing up with some new, not new whales, but some different whales, in the mix as well. And I think most recently that was T19 and T19B, who are a couple of our fan favorites.
They are the OGs.
There might be some argument on that, but they're pretty cool.
They're very cool. So that's the other real interesting story of what's been going on here is we've been seeing T19, who's 57 years old, and her 27-year-old son, T19B. And we've been seeing them, and they are normally traveling with T19C, who is also an offspring. I think he's 21 years old.
Yep, 21.
21-year-old son of T19, and T18, who is thought to be T19's mom. So we have grandma, mom, and her 2 sons normally travel together. In my 8 years here, I've never seen them apart. Although we do see them traveling kind of 2 and 2, spread out sometimes
over miles,
but never apart.
Yeah.
And so it's always been the 4 of them. And all of a sudden we see T19 and 19B. So we have mom and one of her sons. And I think for the first few days that they were spotted, people just assumed, well, they must not be seeing the other 2, but they're there.
And because it started up north. I mean, they were seen off like Telegraph Cove.
Right, a few hundred miles north of here.
T19 and T19B. And I think, people, as we would have down here, just kind of assumed like, oh, the other 2 are around, but, no one's seen them.
And then, as they travel down here, they spend a lot of time up in Southeast Alaska. And they tend to come down here around early August, and we do see them other months of the year. They do pop in here in middle of winter pretty often, and in the spring. But they seem to be staples in August down here, and then they show up, and it's just the 2 of them. And I think there have been no sightings reported of T18 and 19C, and I think everybody started to worry a little bit.
Yeah, I think there was some wondering, like, did something happen to T18 or what? But all of a sudden, Monday morning, they're
reported up a couple hundred miles north of here.
Yeah, and we had T19 and 19B here.
Right, so maybe there was a family squabble.
Maybe like a little feud between T18 and T19, not to like put human emotions on it, but they're smart social animals, and I'm sure they have feuds just like we do.
It's very interesting to see, and we talked about this in the last episode, how we continue to learn about their fluid social dynamics and social norms, and of course we don't know why there's this split, but we certainly know it's not. They're going to come back together at some point. It'll be fun. It would be cool to be out on the water to be there when they do come back together, because usually whales get pretty excited, especially when they reunite with other family members.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see if those two show up down here in the next few weeks or when. I think we're all just kind of waiting to see like when the family gets back together.
Yeah, that it will be interesting. So stay tuned. And T65A5, who we've talked about on many episodes, he's been popping around. He's a little socialite. We've had reports of him out there on days just by himself out there killing seals. And then he seems to join up with pretty much every group that we have down here for short periods of time, and then leaves to either go off on his own or jump in with other groups. I think he, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he was seen at one point with the 124 A2s and 4s.
Yeah, he was. We saw him Friday. No, not Friday. We saw him just recently. We were out and... it was last Thursday. Sorry, it was Davin's last trip before he went to the Arctic for his awesome trips up there. And we were with the 1919B off Galiano Island with Galiano off Galiano. And we're heading home, and then all of a sudden, like... hey, Davin spots another whale ahead of us, and it turned out to be T65A5, just a few miles ahead of the T19s. And what was really interesting to me was like that afternoon, we kind of got back out on the water and up near East Point. T65A5 was there, and T19 and T19B were coming down. Like, talk about meetups. And like just as they were coming together, T19 and T19B vanished.
And then the 37A showed up.
Then the 37A showed up. T19 and 19B had like pulled a hard U-turn and like booked it out into the Strait of Georgia. So there was no meetup at that point.
Which is interesting. I'm sure you'll remember this a few years ago. The very first time that T65A dispersed, we found him with the T19s.
Yeah. And the first time T65A5. Yep.
Yeah, we were out there and we were watching the four T18, T19, 19B, and 19C, and we're like, wait, there's an extra little whale in there. Who is that?
Yeah, and I think it was in like October, which was kind of like it's not a month that we expect any of the T65As to be hanging around.
Right. But he's in there with these huge. We'll post pictures in the show notes. Part of the reason that they are such fan favorites, 19B and 19C are big adult males.
Yeah, we saw it last night.
That's right. So we had 19 and 19B traveling with, here's another example of a partial matriline, the 49As minus the two oldest boys, A1 and A2. Mm-hmm. And it was a really epic encounter. I ended up having a really incredible tour because we were watching the 19 and 19B and part of the 49As traveling in just beautiful late afternoon light. And I decided to leave, and I told our guests that we were going to leave and we were going to come back, but I wanted to show them Steller sea lions to complete the picture of so that they could see one of the most desired prey items for the Bigg's killer whales. And Steller sea lions are the largest sea lions on Earth. They can grow up to 2,500 pounds. They're huge sea lions. So we left for about a half an hour to go look at the sea lions, and then we came back to
find the whales were killing Steller sea lion.
As soon as we pulled in, it was like within 30 seconds, bam, the hunt was on. And one of the most dynamic and what I'll say about watching a sea lion hunt is you really see the power and strength and strategy of killer whales when they're hunting a big sea lion.
Yeah, you really do. And to me, it looked, I mean, it was distant, but it looked like a large sea lion. Like it looked almost fully grown, if not fully grown to me. And the hunt lasted, like, I'd say a good hour and a half.
Yeah, it was a long, yeah, I mean, we both left. We were running out of daylight. We were lucky we were right across from the harbor. But it lasted a long time. And just watching them porpoising out of the water and breaching and trying to throw him in the air and coming down on top of him. And it is really a high energy, very powerful hunt to watch, and we'll definitely post some photos. And I took video. I don't know. I haven't even looked at it yet. But this was just last night. But
I know I have a Galliano breach shot to share at least.
Oh yeah, watching T19B Galliano breach is something.
Yeah, and I think it's totally different from the style of hunting a Steller sea lion is so different from seeing them hunt any other prey item that I've seen here in the Salish Sea. Like we've seen them on harbor seals quite frequently. Harbor porpoise, sometimes they do those aerial behaviors with harbor porpoise, but it seems to be over pretty quickly. Like they're small animals. They're fast, but they're small.
Right. They're very aerodynamic to watch because oftentimes you'll see the orcas chasing the harbor porpoise and they're breaching out of the water, porpoising. And oftentimes they will punt the porpoise in the air, but it's very short lived.
Right.
It's over generally in a minute or two.
Yeah, and with the sea lion, like they would have these like high energy aerial behaviors, and more frequently at the start of the hunt, I think, than towards the end. And then you would see some of usually the adults, and I think it was like T19 and T19A were kind of the main aggressors at the beginning. Would like break off and kind of almost circle around where the Steller was, not super close, but like catching their breath almost while the kids were in there harassing the sea lion, and then they'd all of a sudden come back in, and even Galliano got in on that.
Yeah, well, a couple of things that I'd love to hear your comments on this because a few really cool notes. One is that the 49As, so T49 has a very young calf. I think maybe 8 months old.
Yeah, first seen in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, so 49A6, and that calf is still nursing. Very small in air quotes, right? Because it's
its cute little underbite.
Very cute underbite. And that calf is right in the middle of the hunt, sticking really tight to mom, but it's counterintuitive. We would think like, hey, this is a dangerous activity. This sea lion has really sharp teeth. It's got sharp claws. It's fighting for its life. Right. And you have this 8-month-old right in the middle of the mix, tucked in with mom. Fully in there. And it's funny, we talked about the 124A2s and 4s just a little bit ago. But remember that Steller sea lion hunt we had in the spring? And I think it was in 2019. I think it was 2019. It was right before we went to Monterey Bay. But the 124As were on a Steller sea lion hunt, and 124A3 had just had her calf, and it was probably 2 months old. And he was right in there. And like breaching on top of the sea lion and breaching. He probably breached 100 times, I think. But they must be teaching like right from the beginning of how to hunt.
Yep.
Really, really fascinating. On the other side of the coin, for a decent part of the hunt, 27-year-old Galliano T19B and 49A3, an 11-year-old male, the two of them were off, not engaging in the hunt, but the two of them were off just playing like they were waiting for dinner.
Yeah, a couple of breaches here and there, tail slaps, like, "Hey, mom, I'm getting hungry over here." But we've seen that. I've seen that before on other hunts, and especially the one gray whale calf predation I witnessed in 2014, where like the males were kind of peripheral to the hunt, doing this like peck slapping, tail slapping, maybe an occasional breach, just like waiting for it to be over, and for the feast to begin. But Galliano, I will give him credit on this hunt. He did get in there for one good lunge.
He did. It wasn't like he was gone the whole time, but it is interesting that it's not the first time I've seen, especially on a sea lion hunt, where the adult males just kind of step aside for a little while. It's like they're waiting for. I mean, you even said it. I mean, that hunt was led by the two moms.
Yeah.
T49A and T19. I mean, they were clearly the ones in the middle for the entire time.
Yeah, and who knows what happens below the surface? Maybe the males are more engaged than we think they are, but it doesn't seem that way.
But the females are the badasses. They're the ones really doing the heavy lifting.
Yeah, and yet there are males that travel by themselves, so they have to like be able to hunt, right? We have these two brothers, T60D and E, that have been, kind of off on their own, and obviously they're eating.
Right, and 65A5, he's off on his own eating, and right. 77A, who we talked about in the last episode, he's almost always out on his own.
And frequently eating.
So it's not like they don't know, but it's I think they just like getting taken care of by mom.
Well, who doesn't?
The other thing that I found really interesting is oftentimes there wasn't a lot of action going on, but you knew where to look because you'd see the sea lion at the surface trying to catch his breath and splashing around. Was most likely beaten up and injured, and the whales just kind of seemed to circle and slow down, like almost like they were taking a break. It's like it wasn't this constant all in all the time. They'd go in, they'd pile on, they'd ram him and try and exhaust him, and then it was almost like they would take a break. I don't know if they're assessing like how much longer do we have, or let's this is a marathon. Let's
grab a cup of water.
grab a cup of water. I mean, whatever they're doing. But it was interesting that there were times where the sea lion is thrashing around at the surface, and the whales aren't very far away, but they didn't seem to be. There was no urgency that it's from watching it.
Yeah, and at times like that too, the adults were doing what you said, like kind of circling around, and every once in a while you'd see like a smaller fin come up. And I do think like the kids were kind of like harassing him while that was happening, like not fully engaged and all that, because sea lion is a dangerous creature on its own right. But I would see T49A4 in there, kind of giving a quick swipe by the sea lion, and I almost wonder if they were just trying to like keep it from catching its breath, or maybe it was injured and they can tell, like obviously if it's injured and they're just waiting for it to kind of like wear down. Yeah,
I think maybe that high energy that we see very early on that seems to be sustained over a longer period of time. Maybe that is part of the first injuries to the sea lion. And once they know they've got this in the bag, then they kind of slow down. The urgency isn't there. They don't think the sea lion is going to get away. They put some kids in there to hone their hunting skills.
Yeah, they don't think the sea lion's going to get away, but that's what happened to the 123s. They got cocky.
It's so funny that you said that, because that's exactly what just popped into my head. This was 2020. Spring of 2020.
Yeah, we're in the thick of COVID. We were shut down.
Yeah, and almost in the same exact area, we saw the T123s, family of 4, hunting a Steller sea lion. That hunt went on. We were out there for an hour and a half watching that.
Yeah,
and that sea lion
got into shore,
and they didn't pursue him into shallow water, and he beached himself.
Yeah, and I do think like there's maybe whales that would have pursued him closer to shore. But the T123s, at least T123 and 123A, have stranded before. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's, some leeriness or some PTSD, lingering trauma from that,
Absolutely. What was fascinating about that was it was a sea lion that had been branded from one of the because he was eating salmon on one of the rivers. And so it was a known sea lion. And he was, 18 at the time?
Yeah, so the sea lion is actually, I think this particular sea lion was actually branded because they were doing a long-term tracking.
Okay.
But he was 183R, so if you're ever out with us and you see him, because we still see him, Spoiler alert. He was branded at 6 months old and was 18 at the time of the hunt, and we saw him this spring.
Yeah, and that was so amazing was that hunt went on for an hour and a half.
And it was brutal.
It was brutal. I do have video of that I can post. And what was amazing was we thought for sure, okay, he got away, he's on shore, but man, he's got to have serious internal injuries. He's not going to make it through the night. And we still see him.
Yeah. Showed up again that fall. I know. I think I saw him and I texted you right away. 183R's back. He lived.
Maybe we'll see him this fall. I'll keep you posted on that.
Well, I think I could talk about these whales all day. There's been so much going on out here. We could probably talk about it for hours more, but we have a really special guest.
Yeah, we need to switch gears and talk about humpback whales. North
whales.
Atlantic humpback whales, and seeing them on the Silver Bank, which is north of the Dominican Republic.
Yeah, and before we bring Gene in, we're looking forward to another trip out there in February.
Yeah, we're going to be out there in February. I'm going to be out there for 2 weeks. You're going to be joining us for 1 week. It's a liveaboard out on the Silver Bank to see the North Atlantic humpbacks in their breeding and calving waters. It's a really special place. We're going to talk lots about that with Gene.
Yeah. So let's welcome Gene to the show. All right. Well, welcome, Gene. We're happy to have you on the show. We're really excited to talk to you. We've wanted to have you on since we kind of thought of this podcast. So welcome.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been looking forward to it myself as well.
Yeah.
So let's start out with there's a lot to unpack here. So let's start with Conscious Breath Adventures and what you guys do and what your trips are all about, leaving out of Puerto Plata, Dominican Republic. And let's start with, what is the Silver Bank? Where is it? Probably a good place to start.
Okay. Well, what we do is run a very specialized kind of whale watching trip. It's not just a few hours. It's a week-long cruise. And we're on a liveaboard boat 75 miles offshore on the Silver Bank, which is the largest breeding ground of the North Atlantic humpback whale. And it's also part of the Sanctuary for the Marine Mammals of the Dominican Republic. So we head out there to see and encounter the humpbacks out there, not just to watch, but the primary goal, what brings people out there, besides the spectacular whale watching, is the opportunity to get in the water and snorkel with the whales and meet them eye to eye, face to face.
It is an absolutely life-changing, incredible experience. I've been out with you 4 times and we'll be out for a 5th this coming season. Your season, when you're operating out there, you're going out during the weeks that's kind of in the middle of the season when you would find humpbacks down there. Approximately how long of a season is it for you, and how long are the humpbacks down in the breeding and calving waters?
Right. So these are North Atlantic humpbacks, like the same ones that you would see if you went whale watching off of Cape Cod or the Gulf of Maine. And in the summertime, they're up north feeding, and in the wintertime, they come down south to the Caribbean, the Silver Bank and vicinity for their breeding season. They probably start showing up down on the Silver Bank, I'm going to guess around the middle of December, and they're there through April and into early May. I can only guess on the ends there because that's not when I'm there. Our season is 10 or 11 weeks from the end of January until early April. So it's the peak of the season there with a shoulder of activity on either side. Dominican fishermen that are out there have reported seeing them into May and also in December as well. So that's the time that they're there. But we're just there for a much smaller period of time, that 10 to 11 weeks right in the middle.
And this is a sanctuary, a marine mammal sanctuary. I think the Dominican Republic has done a very admirable job of keeping this area protected for the whales, there's you and there are two other operators, and that's it. You have to have a permit to do this. Do you want to talk a little bit about that angle?
Yeah, absolutely. The Dominicans do get an awful lot of credit for establishing and maintaining the sanctuary as they have. So the sanctuary was first established in, I think it was 1986. And it's been managed very successfully since then. We operate under permit that is issued by the Ministry of the Environment and Natural Resources there in the Dominican Republic. So they, for 30 years now, have limited the number of permits out there to just three. Three commercial operators, Conscious Breath Adventures is one, running these week-long eco tour trips, very specialized kind of trips. And then they also have a fourth permit for special circumstances, research crews, film crews, educational, conservation kind of special project work that the Dominicans use conditionally like that. And they deserve a lot of credit for maintaining the sanctuary as they have. There are other places in the world where people can go to swim with humpback whales, but the permitting is much more generous, I guess you could say. And there's many more operators, and the number of people, it's a different scenario. So for us, on the Silver Bank, between the three operators, less than 700 people visit the Silver Bank every year, where some of the big whale watching boats up, say, off of Cape Cod will carry 250 people in a morning. And then they'll do it again in the afternoon. And so it's a very specialized, very well managed situation there. And the Dominicans, people have approached them about getting another permit, a fourth permit out there, or trying to throw a little bit of money at them, thinking that would influence them. But they've been very steadfast and very progressive, and have said no, and they've maintained it the way they have for a long time now, and they deserve a lot of credit for that.
Absolutely. And I think it's one of the real special things about that trip is when you're out there, you feel like you're the only ones there. You really get a sense that, and you really do feel you are in the world of the humpback whale. You're not part of, you're not in tourism. There aren't other people there. You don't see other people. You don't think about other people. You don't think about anything that's going on in the world that you came from. You are completely immersed in their world, and that's all you're really thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. The three operators, we moor relatively close together. So we're in sight of each other, just several hundred yards apart in the designated mooring area. But other than that, there's no islands, there's no shore, there's no shops, there's no internet, there's no cell phone service. There's just waves and whales, and you are in their living room. You can see whales any hour of the day or night. Sometimes you can hear them sleeping near the boat at night in the dark. Sometimes you can just get up in the morning and go out on deck with your coffee and see some swimming by. Or, our favorites are the ones that show up during happy hour at sundown.
Yeah.
The ones that we refer to as the cocktail whales, and we always give them a nice toast before heading in for dinner. But yeah, it's an amazing place to be there. You're just surrounded by and immersed in humpback whale energy the whole time.
That you just sparked a memory for me from my very first trip out with you, and I was down there with some people from bluevoice.org and Hardy Jones, who I think was our first connection with each other. Yeah. And it was, and we love to kind of tell stories on here and share memorable moments. And you just sparked this great memory of, I think it was the first night at cocktail hour, and everybody's on deck, and there was a competitive group of rowdy males after a female, and they were just zigzagging between the three boats that were moored. And it was just this incredible collision of cultures where we're on deck at the end of the day, and you know, I've got a martini in my hand, and you've got 6 big male humpbacks pushing each other out of the way to get the right to spend some time with this female. And it was just this just incredible memory I have. Yeah,
it's a great place, and you never know what you're going to see at any given time. So it's very special.
So how do you have any sense of about how many humpbacks migrate down to the Silver Bank specifically each year?
Well, my best understanding of it is that the North Atlantic population is doing relatively well, and there's something different numbers that you see online as I research and study up on stuff, but maybe 12,000 North Atlantic humpbacks. And in like 1999, there was a big multinational study that was conducted by the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, and some other agencies. And it was called YONA, the Year of the North Atlantic Humpback. And they were actually out there for two seasons, tagging, photo IDing, doing genetic studies, with the biopsies that they would get, and et cetera. And one of their conclusions from that study, which was more than 20 years ago now, was that some 3,000 to 5,000 humpback whales visit the sanctuary as a whole, not just the Silver Bank, but the sanctuary as a whole every year. And given that the population has been increasing 2 or 3% a year since then, I would guess it's 4,000 to 6,000 or 5,000 is probably a pretty safe guess. Now, I should clarify, the sanctuary itself is tens of thousands of square miles. It's quite large, extending north off the coast of the Dominican Republic, and it's a big area. But then there's 3 banks, shallower areas, bodies of water, including the Silver Bank, which is several hundred square miles. So when I talk about the Silver Bank versus the sanctuary, that's the difference there. We're talking about a big submerged plateau that's several hundred square miles versus tens of thousands of square miles. And then the area that we operate, our radius out from our mooring is only 3 or 4, maybe 5 miles that we go from the mothership on any given day. We can have activity happening right next to the boat. Most everything happens within 2, 3 miles. So we only cover a very, very, very small part of the sanctuary as a whole.
Yeah, and I think just to clarify for some of our listeners who are going, what's a bank? Because I know that there's going to be some people that are just not familiar with whales and this. But it's a shallow plateau, as you said, and average depth like 30 to 50 feet or maybe a little bit more than that.
No, there on the Silver Bank, the average depth of the bank as a whole is probably it is 80 to 100 feet.
Okay.
But where we moor is behind an extensive barrier reef, and that's what makes it a civilized place to be. And there, the reef comes up literally right to the surface of the water.
Sure.
And the depth of the water between the coral heads and such there is 50, 40, 50, 60 feet. But off the bank, if you go off the bank, it very quickly drops down to 7, 8, 10,000 feet. Between the bank and Puerto Plata, it goes down to 14,000
wow.
feet deep.
Yeah, just to kind of put that in perspective to people that are, not as familiar with that. It's a huge change. And
it sounds like the North Atlantics are humpbacks are similarly situated to what we're seeing out here with the Northeast Pacifics in terms of population growth and an amazing comeback from near extinction during commercial whaling. I'm definitely seeing pictures and hearing stories about the whales that you would see down in the Silver Bank. They're watching them now off New York in the summertime.
Yeah, definitely. Off of New York, Cape Cod and vicinity, in Gulf of Maine, up into the Bay of Fundy. It's not unusual for whales to be sighted in both locations. We've had a number of people who have swum with a whale on the Silver Bank with us, who then saw that same whale in its summer feeding ground that same summer, which is really cool. Yeah, and I've been this close to having the same thing. I live in Florida, so I don't see them in their summer feeding ground. It's a special trip for me to go there. But I was this close up in the Bay of Fundy to seeing a very well-known North Atlantic humpback called sockeye. And sockeye is like a rock star whale in the North Atlantic. He's called sockeye because he's got this disfigured lower jaw that very much looks like the jaw of a sockeye salmon. And he's super gregarious. He will mug boats, highly interactive. People love him up in New England and the northern waters because he interacts so successfully with whale watching boats. Very distinctive. And we've seen him down on the Silver Bank, like every other year, every third year or so we see him, and have had some really cool interactions with him too. And I almost saw him. I missed him by one day up in New England. I was supposed to go out on a trip with some friends up there, and the weather wasn't very good, so we gave it a pass. And then when they got back to the doctor, they're like, "You'll never guess who we saw."
Wow.
So I was sorry about that one.
What a cool thing to be able to see an individual in two places like that,
or to just miss it and then
experience
that disappointment.
Yeah, well, the opportunity will come around.
It's still
I'm
out.
sure, but
yeah, it's still out there. That goal. So
getting back to the Silver Bank and Conscious Breath Adventures, we've talked about getting in the water and snorkeling with humpbacks, and I'm sure people are kind of wondering how that works and what that's like. Can you kind of walk us through, and we're going to post links in our show notes to Conscious Breath Adventures, and I know you got some incredible video, but can you just walk us through what is, I mean, Sara and I both know because we've both been there, right, but would love to share with people what is it like to start to finish with an in-water encounter with humpback whales?
Okay, so excuse me, a little bit of background. We spend a week offshore on our mothership, which is 115 feet long, and it accommodates 20 people in 10 rooms, right? And we have a crew, excellent captain, engineer, first mate, chef, deckhands. We've got a whole group, 9 guys that work with us, me and my staff. And then we have 2 25-foot fiberglass skiffs. And so we live on the mothership. That transports us out there, and then we're on that. That's like our sort of hotel and restaurant. And then during the day, we go out on the skiffs. So half the guests will go in one skiff with me and a boat driver, and the other half will go with another staffing. And we go off and we start milling around on the Silver Bank, just idling around looking. And usually we don't have to look too far for too long. And then we spend a lot of time whale watching. Because I always tell the guests that there's an awful lot of whales out here, but most of them we are not even going to think about trying to swim with. Because for us to have a good interaction, we have to find the appropriate whales engaging in appropriate behavior. Now, any whale that's swimming or doing anything at all is going to be moving too fast for a bunch of clumsy terrestrial mammals like ourselves. Even a very skilled swimmer, forget about it. So we spend a lot of time whale watching, and the whale watching is spectacular. The photographic opportunities, it's a great thing. But when we find some whales that are resting, then we'll spend a bunch of time just observing, seeing, are they moving? What's their breath cycle like? How long are they staying down for? What do they do when they come to the surface? How are they breathing? Is it very relaxed, very calm? Are they moving a lot? Or you just spend a lot of time observing the behavior. And then if everything looks good, we'll be sort of narrating. I'll be telling people what I'm looking at, what I'm seeing, and interpreting for them. And we'll all get ourselves ready. And we're just mass snorkeling fins. Scuba diving it's not even permitted out there, and it would be counterproductive anyway. Mass snorkel fins and a wetsuit. We'll get ourselves ready. the first thing that we'll do is the guide, that'll be either me or my staff on the other boat, will slip in the water. And when the whales dive down and we see where they're resting, where they've gone down, we'll slip in the water and swim quietly over to where we last saw them go down. And then we'll look for them, which is not always as easy as it sounds. And then when we do see them, we'll stick our hand up in the air. Hey, I found the whales. Here they are. And then we'll give a whole bunch of different hand signals to the boat driver to approach them this direction or that and get people ready. And okay. And then we'll give a signal and everybody will get in the water quietly, slow. I'm always coaching this, very important. And they'll slowly and quietly swim out towards where the guide is. And then they will just be floating on the surface. And these whales are down. We try not to approach them when they're on the surface. We let them rest, down in the water column. And then we're there floating, not exactly above them, but, on the surface, and looking at them. And then when it's time for their breath cycle, if we've picked some happy whales here, when they come up, they will interact with the swimmers. Sometimes they'll just have a look at you and slowly move a little ways and then settle back down. But sometimes they will be highly interactive. And they're very, very social, very interactive, very gregarious. And then that's our goal, is to have an interaction. We don't just like zoom up on a whale, jump overboard, and then see a tail as it swims away. That's not how we do things. It's not even allowed under the rules out there. Counterproductive. We're looking for that thing where the whales approach us out of their innate curiosity. And that's the most humbling part of the whole thing, is when you have this animal 35, 40 feet long, as big as a school bus, literally as big as a school bus, coming up towards you and interacting with you of its own free will. That's the experience that you've had, and that is what moves people so incredibly. And so that's how we do it. Sometimes it'll be a few minutes, but sometimes it'll be an hour that these whales will be around for us, and it's hard to put into words how incredibly powerful that experience is.
I can definitely say that firsthand. It is, and watching the process play out from the beginning until you're in the water, it is a very slow, respectful, methodical process. It's not just 10 people jumping off the side of a boat. It is a very very well coordinated, careful, thoughtful process. And a lot of the times, I've seen you in the water, and it's like the whales. These aren't good whales to swim with. This isn't going to pan out, and you come back to the boat, and then sometimes we get in the water, and I do remember, I love this conversation because it's bringing back memories that have not been at the forefront of my mind, but I do remember being in the water with you on one of my trips, and we were with a mom and a calf and a male escort, and they were on their way back down to continue their resting, and we were swimming in the direction where they were going down, and you were right in front of me, and you turned and looked back at me, and you pointed down, and I didn't know what I was looking down to see, because I saw the mom and the calf way ahead of us, and I looked down, and the male escort was on his side, maybe 15, 20 feet below us, looking straight up at us, swimming by, and it was like, thank you, Gene. I would have totally missed that.
Yeah, it's when you have those situations like that where you have an escort. And for those of you who aren't sure exactly what that is, if there's a mother and a calf, sometimes you will have a male whale that tags along. He's not the father. He's not related in any way, except maybe coincidentally, I suppose it could happen. But he's hoping to have the opportunity to curry some favor and mate with her. And so if you have a mom calf and an escort, sometimes the escort can be very curious, and you may not see him, but he hasn't gone away. So you always got to be looking around, because they will sneak up behind or below when people are looking down at mom and startle you quite significantly. So it's always fun to see people get surprised that way.
No, on my only trip out so far, I'm so excited to come back in February. But we had that female hook in her calf, and then the male escort for 4 days. It was the same male, and I remember being in the water with them at one point, and I saw the female and the calf, and the female and the calf, and suddenly I realized, where's the escort? And we turned and looked, and he was looking at us from maybe 10 feet away on the other side of us, and it was just like, oh, startling almost, but so cool.
Yeah, and I'll add too, of the four, what keeps me coming back is it's just like whale watching up here in that you never know what you're going to see, but it's never going to be the same as the last time.
Exactly.
And the last time we were down there with you, it was uncanny that the entire week that we were down there, no matter where we went, what direction, or whether it was the morning trip or the afternoon trip, every single in-water encounter ended up with the same mom, calf, and escort that entire week. I don't think we were in the water with any other whales, not by our design whatsoever. It just turned out that every time we found whales that were agreeable to us being in the water with them, it was the same three.
Yeah, you never do know exactly what's going to happen, and you nailed it right on the head. No 2 weeks are the same. It's always, even for me, and going out there as many years as I have, it's there's something different about every week, and there's going to be something special that's kind of unique to that week. You just don't know what it's going to be until you actually go out there and do it. But it's funny. We have folks that come out with us that are like, oh, this is my once in a lifetime bucket list. I've wanted to do this. I'm gonna, my one time only, and I'm so happy to be out here to do it. And then at the end of the week, they're like, so when do you have space next season? and I've found that if people come out twice, they're very likely to come out a third or a fourth time, because if they had a good enough time the first time that they want to come out again, the second time is so much different and still so good that they're like, well, that's how different it was 2 times. What's it going to be like on the third time? And so there you go. And it happens like that. And it's every week is different. Some weeks there's maybe a little bit more activity than others. And there's no way to predict that. It's the nature of weather and wildlife and everything else. But it's just being there 24 hours a day, sort of in their living room, like you said, that gives you those opportunities to have something really memorable on any week.
Well, and you just described how I went through that process. My first trip, this was a bucket list, once in a lifetime opportunity. And then when I had such a great time, and then I was talking to people about it, and they're like, well, we should do that. I'm like, all right, let's go. And then you see that how different it is the second time, but it's just as great. And then you're hooked.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Gene, do you have any in all of your experience down there? Do you have any like really just standout encounters or things that you've seen down there?
It's
I know that's not an easy question.
Yeah, no, that's not an easy question, and I don't have any one particular answer to that. But because it's that whole concept of you never know what you're going to see, and every week is different. And so, I've been very lucky. It's hard to believe how the time flies, to have, been down there for 20 seasons. I've been down there, 15 running Conscious Breath Adventures. Prior to that, I was working on one of the operators out there, but, I don't know. It's not so much one experience, but just the vibe that is what, when I think about it, that really gets me, is the whole very humbling, what are these animals thinking when they interact with you like they do? And the calves, okay, they're playful and curious, and they will come and interact with you, and they're like, 1,500-pound puppy dogs, they're just getting all excited. And but when you have a full-grown whale that comes up and looks you in the eye and interacts with you, you just can't help but wonder why and what it's all about. So, and there's been some great examples of that we've had where the one that's coming to my mind right now. One time we were watching some whales that were doing their breath cycle thing stationary. We're watching and waiting and timing them and looking like a pretty good opportunity for a swim. And everybody's watching off the side of the boat, very intently watching that patch of water where these whales went down. And then this whale popped up, like literally right next to the boat, blows right in front of us. All of a sudden there's this huge spray, like literally in our noses. And there was this whale right there, and it was a female, and she stayed with the boat for like 2 hours. And we didn't get in at first because she was so close, but then we did. And she was laying there, rolling around, interacting with us. And again, it's the eye contact.
Mm-hmm.
It's the eye contact. I ask people frequently, regularly, when they come down to the Silver Bank, when they come out with us, what is your goal? What are you looking for? What is the experience you want to have this week? And almost always the answer is, I want to look a whale in the eye. Mm-hmm. And there's something about that connection, that eye to eye connection. It's one of the most intimate connections that two living creatures can make, is eye to eye contact. And so when that happens in a significant way like that, it just sort of rearranges things for you and how you think and feel about things.
Well, yeah, it goes back to what you said. It's you just wonder what are they thinking, what's going through their mind. And I do want to just be clear to the listeners when we're talking about interaction. This is all eye contact, but there's no physical contact going on.
Oh, right. Yeah, I should have specified that some time ago. But yes, it's all. They can come close enough to look them in the eye, and they can be 10 or 15 away for the calves. The adults, they tend to stay a bit further off, but you still get a really good look at them. But yeah, there's none of that. It's all just vibing each other and looking at each other, and
it's incredible.
And having that.
Yeah. It's an absolutely incredible experience. Sara, you were out on my last trip. Do you have any standout memories from that week that you want to share?
Well, there were so many memories because I remember like you kind of like leading me up to this, like, all right, we're going to go down the Silver Bank. It's really amazing. We're going to have a great time. And I mean, I tell people about that experience on the boat all the time. And I think like I had this, just from being up here, like, okay, we're going to get in the water and we might view them from 50 yards. Like maybe, we're up here 100 yards from them and I know they're big animals. And then we got in the water and they're like 10 or 15 feet away and they're really big animals. And I knew they were huge, but they were very, very big. And I think there's so many, but one of the ones that stands out to me is what you were saying is the eye contact is the mom with her calf is like us getting in the water and her actually like looking us in the eye, but then going to sleep and like letting the baby just kind of be between her and us. And like, how much trust does an animal or anybody have to let you be there in her presence while she's sleeping and her newborn baby is right there?
It is awake and rolling around.
Right.
Yeah. And it's just very hard to really express. And we're also very fortunate on the few occasions like we have seen calves nursing, and that's a pretty special treat. That doesn't happen all that often, but to be able to witness it, I mean, they're nursing frequently during the day. We just don't see it all that often, and so that's always special. Or, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the experience of swimming with a singing humpback whale, because we've got the whales that are out there singing, the male whales. And you put a hydrophone overboard during the lull in the action, and you can hear several or dozens or more than you can count singing whales out and about and around. And if we're fortunate to get dialed in on one that's close and resting, because they usually sing stationary, and so they provide a good opportunity for us, and we can get in the water. And this is a song that's so powerful it can travel dozens and dozens and many, many miles. I'm not even exactly sure how far don't want to exaggerate too much, but a long way. And it's very powerful. And, you can hear it from the deck of the boat before you even get in the water sometimes. But when you do get in the water, sound travels through water much more powerfully and effectively than through air. And our bodies are mostly water.
Yeah.
So the sound energy literally goes right through you. You're literally immersed in the song, and it'll vibrate the long bones in your arms or your legs, or you'll feel it vibrating your chest cavity, whatever your personal resonance frequency is. And that is also just a peak experience for us out there too. And it's a very special thing.
Yeah, I think of my 4 weeks. I think 2 or 3 times have been in the water with the singer, and just you talk about a humbling and awe-inspiring experience to hear it so clearly and feel it through your entire body. There's nothing there are no words for it.
Yeah, it's a very special experience, and sometimes you can anticipate that it's going to happen, but other times it's a complete surprise that oh, hey, it's a singer, and things just go from there.
It's also one of those experiences that if you're on board a trip and we find a singer and you're getting in the water, it's not like, oh, I've done that before. Like I want to find something else. Like that's a do that as many times as you possibly can type of experience.
Yeah, that's one where if the guest and my other guide are out in the other direction in their skiff and they find a singer and, hey, we got a singer over here, they'll call on the radio. We stay in touch on the radio. I'll drop almost anything, whatever we've got going on, and head over that way for the chance to swim with a singer. It's a great experience.
Yeah, and there are still experiences that I read about in your weekly newsletters that I have. Yeah, I'm still out waiting to experience more of those and some new ones. I will say, I do want to say this as well, because we like sharing stories. One of my favorite experiences on board, and I do this every time I'm out with you, is that very first morning after the overnight crossing out to the Silver Bank, and the sun is just coming up, and the boat, the mothership is just pulling onto the edge of the Silver Bank, and we still have an hour or so to go to the mooring site. Grab a cup of coffee, go out on deck, and you just start seeing humpbacks all over the place, and it's hard to put into words what that's like, but it's like that's the gateway. Like you've entered their world, and they're all around just doing their thing, and you're weaving in and out through the reefs, getting to the mooring site. And I will always make sure, no matter how late I stay up the night before hanging out with friends, we'll always be up at sunrise to catch the first whales and the first sightings out there.
Yeah, it's always fun to be out there and see the first whale of the week, and it's also funny to be up there with the guests and the first sighting of a whale, a mile away or however far it may be, and the telephoto lenses and click, there it is, and then by the third day of the week, there will be whales relatively close to the boat, and people will barely give it a second glance because they're like, oh, okay, I get it. It sort of readjusts the expectations a little bit.
That is funny. Well, we're gonna post photos and some videos from some of our trips that we've done with you, and definitely post links to your website and social media so people know how to get in touch with you. And if any of our listeners are even remotely thinking about joining you on a tour, I will say that they should do it, because it is life-changing and absolutely incredible experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I honestly, it's like almost every trip I talk about, the Silver Bank your operation down there and how life-changing it was, and that people should go.
Well, and the education that we are able to share on our trips up here when we're with humpbacks, it's an incredible amount of information that we were able to get, not just from the firsthand experience of seeing them in the water, but also the education that you're providing as well. We have a lot of information that we're able to share firsthand because of our experience down there with you.
Yeah, and the educational component too is an important aspect of our operation. The experience is exciting and thrilling and adventure and all that, but there's a lot more to it than just that. We like to educate people and inform people, and so the name of the company illustrates some of this. So, Conscious Breath Adventures. People are like, well, where's that come from? Well, cetaceans, which are whales and dolphins, porpoises, are conscious breathers. They have to think about the breaths that they take. Now, you and me, our dogs, most terrestrial mammals are unconscious breathers. We can go to sleep, which is a state of unconsciousness, keep breathing, and wake up in the morning. But cetaceans, they have to think about it. So, Conscious Breath Adventures implies that I do adventures, I run trips that focus on conscious breathers, which is true, especially the humpbacks. But there's a secondary meaning that I like much, much more, because consciousness is another word for awareness. And we like to encourage people to be aware individuals, personally, locally, globally, however it may be, but be conscious individuals, be aware of yourself and your place in the world. And breath is another word for inspire. When you take a breath, you've inspired a lungful of life-giving oxygen. And then an adventure is what you have when you're out on the Silver Bank. And so when people have that adventure and they look a whale in the eye and they're so moved by the experience that they had, they're so humbled, they're wide open. And so once they are inspired by that adventure, that's the time to raise the consciousness. So Conscious Breath Adventures are adventures that inspire consciousness. And it's that secondary meaning to the company name that I love so much. And I've literally had people that sign up to come out on a trip just because they like the name. And it just came to me one day, and I knew it was the right name at the time.
I love that. Love that a lot.
Yeah, there's just nothing like this. It is really an awakening experience for sure.
Well, Gene, thanks so much for joining us today. And I know we're so excited to be joining you in February, and I'm sure many more seasons to come.
Yeah, I just got bummed out realizing that I'm after talking about this for the last 45 minutes. I'm so ready to go, and I just realized it's 5 months away.
Oh, it'll be here. 5 months goes by so quickly. It won't be any time at all before you'll be there.
Yeah, we're very excited about it.
And I know we'll be there and be like, all right, now 2024, we're gonna have to go back.
Right. I mean, I think on this year I'm doing 2 weeks, because every year I've gone, at the end of the trip I've always asked you, like, hey, you don't happen to have any cancellations for next week, do you?
You never know, but yeah, if going out for 2 weeks, if you're lucky enough to get to do it, that'll be a first experience for you and a great thing to do as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Well, really appreciate it, and it's always great to catch up and talk to you, Gene.
My pleasure, always, and it's good to see you, and I can't wait to see you in 2023.
All right. Well, what an awesome conversation with Gene about Conscious Breath Adventures. I think I learned something new, but I always do from Gene. And gosh, it was just so got me pumped for being back out on the Silver Bank.
I am very excited to get back out there, and after we're having these epic encounters here, but now I'm thinking how excited I am to get back down to the Silver Bank.
I know. I was just thinking we were talking maybe taking, doing every other year down there. And now I'm like, oh, I don't know. I think I might need to go back in 2024, and I'm not even there in 2023 yet.
I know. We may do a special charter with After the Breach one of these years down on the Silver Bank. So stay tuned for that. And we're going to post lots of cool stuff in the show notes. Some videos and photos and all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, and guys, really highly recommend going out with Gene. It's just it is life changing. I mean, Jeff can tell you I sat in the airport and cried after this tour going home, and came back and like started doing this full time. I mean, that's how meaningful it was to me. So I quit my corporate job of 11 years and decided that, you know, this was going to be my life, and that really sparked from that trip.
It was the same for me when I was down there in 2013, I think it was, and I was trying to figure out what I really wanted to do with my life, and I realized on that trip that being out on the water, sharing whales with people, that was all I cared about, and I would do, and that's right there. That became a singular focus for me, and I think it was within a year I was out here.
Yeah. I mean, and what Gene was talking about and choosing the name Conscious Breath Adventures and what that means to him, like it is an inspiration. Like every breath we draw in is like, you know, to inspire, whether it's like just that lung full of air or talking with people or connecting people with these amazing animals. You know, very few people, very small percentage of the human population have the privilege of seeing these whales in the wild. And it's just something that we connect with on such a meaningful level when we're out on the water and talking to people. So, you know, it's so important to me and to you.
Absolutely. Life is never the same, and your outlook on the world and our role in the world is never the same once you've seen whales in the wild.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, it's been great. It's been a wonderful episode. And hit us up on social media, Instagram, Facebook.
Send us an email.
Yeah, shoot us an email if you have some topics you'd like to hear about. I've already had a few suggestions, and we'll be back with you guys in a new episode of After the Breach very soon.
Leave us reviews, and we will talk to you on the next episode. Thank you.
Thanks for listening, guys.